Friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Wrestle Juice. Time for your hot takes for AEW's latest pay-per-view, Full Gear. Went down last night. Let's go ahead and just dive into them. And at the end of this video, I will give you guys an update on the CM Punk title fundraiser situation. I spent $700 on a CM Punk championship title. Still hasn't shipped, but it's the weekend, so I expect it'll probably ship sometime this week, and then we'll do the grand unboxing. But I got some great news about the events of the past 48 hours. So just stay tuned to the end of the video, and I'll give you guys the old update. Here we go. First up, Mario Brown says, why is there a go-home angle on a pay-per-view? This made me laugh because on one hand, it's totally true, and on the other hand, I really kind of enjoyed the ending angle there at Full Gear. Of course, Jon Moxley, kind of in bloodline fashion. And look, I understand overbooked heel getting help from a faction type finishes did not begin with the bloodline, but it's the most recent example of a prominent world title situation where the bad guy gets the win via his homies in his faction, right? So that's what happened last night. A really good match between Mox and Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy put up a hell of a fight. Mox kicked out of a shot to the head via the world title in the attaché case. And then Wheeler Yuta came in when the ref was distracted, gave Orange Cassidy a knee. One paradigm shift later, Jon Moxley and still AEW World Champion. And then they did this angle where Hangman Adam Page came down and Mox was like, whoa, buddy, what's your deal? Christian comes down for a potential cash-in situation. Jay White attacks him. And then Darby Allen crashes his car into the Death Rider's truck. They make escape. They escape in an SUV that's also waiting for them. So, and it ended with Darby Allen saying, let's fucking go. Let's do this shit. Let's finish it here. I actually really enjoyed the chaotic nature of that finish. The crowd was a bit deflated because I think they did a really good job building to that finish where Mox ended up retaining, but it clearly was not. I think they did a really good job of making people think, holy shit, this could actually happen with Orange Cassidy winning the title. But it didn't. Mox won. It was reminiscent of some of Roman Reigns' victories during the Bloodline days, but whatever. I mean, that's sort of, I guess, the direction they're taking right now. And again, the Bloodline didn't invent that, right? It's kind of a tried and true wrestling trope. In any event, I like the chaos. I think the crowd wasn't hot for it because they were deflated by the finish of the match. And there was a lot going on in that finishing angle. And yes, it totally did feel like a big go-home angle to a large pay-per-view. But they're setting up what's going to happen, over the next, honestly, kind of months. The thing that I really liked about the finishing angle is that it opened up the Mox story to more characters. It basically brought a whole segment of the company into the Mox World Order stuff, which is what I've been whining and bitching about over at Going in Raw this entire time. It seemed like Mox was targeting some very specific people, leaving out some characters that actually do kind of vibe with what he's saying. People in AEW need to be more hard-nosed. They need to be, fighters. They need to be killers, right? And he's targeting guys like Orange Cassidy, who's essentially been pretty much a comedy act, except for the few feuds that he's actually gotten out of that. And now with Hangman Adam Page involved in the mix and Jay White involved in the mix, and of course Christian with that contract, it seems less likely that they're just going to go straight to Darby Allen because you still have him in the background terrorizing people. I still think that you need to build to Darby Allen learning how to win actual matches, but seemingly you got to do that with Hangman Adam Page as well because he lost to Jay White in a really good match last night. But I liked it on that level. I still think, to me, when I watched Full Gear last night, AEW's trouble sort of boiled down to two major things. I think if they fix two things with the company, they'll be in a pretty decent spot and they'll start getting some of that buzz back from where it used to be, a couple of years ago. I think one of the things is a very, very simple and easy one, and that's this presentation. The one thing that people really, I'll put it as one of the things that I think is kind of an underrated aspect of what people really loved about the Attitude Era, which everybody goes, things need to be back to the Attitude Era. Well, Honestly, the matches kind of sucked back then. The storylines were fun, but more than anything, everything had a sense of urgency back then. There was always like bang, bang, bang. I mean, they called it Crash TV because they didn't want one thing on the TV too long. That was a Vince Russo philosophy, and it worked really, really well back then. It was bang, 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 bang. And I think AEW could really stand to benefit from that. They have the talent. The talent there is really good. The talent there is incredibly good. When you have Hangman Adam Page, Swerve Strickland, Bobby Lashley, Jay White, Christian, when you have all these names, it's just a matter of like, you've got the ingredients, you need the recipe. And the other big thing they need to do, which is more difficult, is stick to some fucking stories. When you set something up, you gotta see it through to the end. At this point, they have dropped the ball on so many stories. And when I say drop the ball, I don't even mean they didn't execute them properly. They just simply don't execute them. They set something up and then they completely forget about it. They need to stick to a plan and see it through. If you do that for a period of a year, you will see the dividends pay off. And I know injuries happen. Backstage politics should not be a thing in AEW. It really shouldn't. I fear it is, but it shouldn't be. At some point, you got to put your foot down and be like, this is the plan. We're going to stick to it. And there needs to be communication there. I don't know what's going on backstage, but there does need to be an amount of, we need to finish these stories. What we saw last night, contrary to this thing right here from says they have no clue where they're going now. The ending was just them throwing everything at the wall and hoping something will stick. I kind of disagree with that take. I know it might feel that way, but at least for now, it seems like they do have kind of an order of things. If you look at Mox's reaction to Hangman Adam Page, the dude seemed kind of intrigued with what Hangman is bringing to the equation. If you look at what Christian Cage is doing, Hangman, I'll give you the first title shot. Give me the damn contract so we can do this. Hangman obliges. Darby Allen has been consistent, terrorizing the Death Riders, even taking a loss to Claudio. He doesn't care. He just wants to terrorize these guys. I think there is a plan in place now. They just need to make sure that this is the plan that they stick with and we get to the finishes to these various stories instead of them pivoting again. It seemed like they were going to go one direction with Okada and the Young Bucks and the Death Riders, and then the Young Bucks just left, and Okada, they're basically just like, hey, guess what? He's going to be in the C2. You got to lay out your story, do the beginning, do the middle, and do the end. And if they do that, you will see results. People will be like, oh, wow, this story actually went from A to B to C, and it went all the way to the conclusion, as opposed to A to B, and then they did something else and started at A again. So I think right now they do know where they're going, but they need to make sure that 6 months from now, they adhered to the plan that they laid out, and any pivots were ones that make sense. And at the very least, conclude where the story was before the pivot, if that makes sense. 187 Mr. House, oh, poor Mr. House, says, ice cold take. These things are way too damn long. Even if they're actually not, it always feels that way. So, I mean, it's 4 hours for a main card. So much of it depends on pacing. I'll be honest with you. I'll just say this about this because this is a take that is harped on. And I know you're acknowledging that by saying it's ice cold. Yes, they can feel that way when the stories aren't there to justify putting these matches on pay-per-view for $50. And you can debate whether or not the stories that landed on pay-per-view this time all deserved to be there for us to pay $50 for. That being said, I will say this from my standpoint, because you guys know, usually we do AEW pay-per-views and WWE Premium Live events as watch-alongs, and then we do our review right afterwards. Because Larson was out of town due to family obligations, I did a watch-along for the pre-show with the Boom with the Costco Guys, and then I just watched the pay-per-view without doing the watch along. And I'll be honest with you, I might pitch that to Larson going on now for AEW reviews to kill the watch alongs on them, simply because I feel like when these things are more match involved, I need to pay closer attention to them. And I think it was a more fulfilling experience watching the pay-per-view without having to worry about the added thing of engagement, worrying about this, channel point predictions, the Big Blue predictions, all that stuff. So I don't know. I think that without having to deal with that added layer of my involvement with the community during the pay-per-view, it made for a more interesting experience. It made for a more complete experience. I'll put it that way. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting, my perception of it, which is going to be different from your guys', of course, because this is like my job and stuff. Go Birds XTL said Darby looked legit concussed. And Zach Beckett says, why did they let Darby drive the car instead of a stunt man or something? This isn't the same as taking a bump. Darby looked like he was legit hurt stumbling around. So I went back when I saw this take and I looked at it again. And here's the thing. I'm not thoroughly convinced. So there's two things to consider. Number one, I've seen several videos of Darby Allen crashing cars on his own property. That's just what this dude apparently does. But number two, the camera did pan away for a significant period of time so that it was possible that it was a legitimate stuntman and not actually Darby Allen who crashed the car in this situation. The stumbling didn't look overtly real. It didn't look like it was anything that he couldn't have faked. So I think that's entirely possible that they got an actual stuntman to do the crash and then they did the swaparoo. There was tons of time that camera was not on the car. Now, maybe it's out on social media that it was legitimately him. I don't know. But Darby does seem to have some experience in crashing cars and because I've seen videos of it. So maybe the guy knows what he's doing. But to me, the selling of the car crash could have just been that selling. I mean, yeah, he slipped trying to get up on the hood of the car, but like you look and there's all sorts of like, glass and flotsam and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me. And on top of that, if the guy is simply selling, if he's faking that he's injured, that's something that he might add to his performance. So I'm not going to jump the gun on this one. I do think from a matter of like safety and wanting to protect your people, Tony Khan probably should be, because I know I would. I'd be like, no, you're not going to do this. I understand that you can do this, but like, this is a big closing angle. If you get this wrong, because I feel like the margin of error is really small here. If you get this wrong and you legitimately fuck yourself up, we are screwed on the finish of the pay-per-view. So it wouldn't shock me if just to make sure everything went smooth, they did the old switcheroo. Even if Darby was like, no, I could totally do this. You got to put your foot down and say, no, you're not going to do this. We're going to get Stuntman McStunts-a-lot over here to do it for you. And then we'll fake it. Okay. So I don't know what the real deal was. Maybe it's out there that it was actually him. If it was, clearly he pulled it off okay, and I think he was fine. Mr. Dark says, before today, I was like, what the heck is the Rizzler? Now I'm like, why the heck was there a Rizzler? I will say this. That crowd thoroughly bought into the absurdity and the fun of the Costco Guys. That match was a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, man. Look, everything I've heard about Big Boom AJ, the dad of the Costco Guys, makes me think that he's a solid guy. He's not like a dick who's like being overly exploitive. He's doing these stupid ass TikToks in Costco with his kids, and it seems like they're all having a good time, and it actually seems like it's an okay situation, and he's not a piece of shit dad like a lot of people in that situation probably would be. And if that's the case, I love this for him. He tried out his dream 20 years ago. It didn't quite work out. And then he found a new way to go viral. Honestly, reminds me of myself. 20 years ago, I was trying to break into comic books. That shit did not work out because I was a terrible businessman. And then, things worked out for me all right because I get to do a pro wrestling podcast with my best friend. And I got, the YouTube channel here. So I feel that, man. I think that guy, if he's, and again, I've heard from several places, he's a good guy. He's a solid guy. He's a good father. You gotta love this for him. That crowd was so supportive and they were having such a good time with this. And QT Marshall, hats off to him as well. I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm okay with the Costco guys. Not necessarily going to watch their content, but they're pretty funny. Math says the Mina angle would have been more impactful on Dynamite. On a show of this length, it just gets lost in a sea of content. I agree with this take. I think this should have been a Dynamite angle. You only had one women's match. I think that they probably should have built up more feuds to put another women's match on this card. Didn't even need to be the world title. As we've seen, you can tell plenty of stories away from the championship titles. Let's get some more women's matches on this card. Sharpie Z says the Ricochet versus Takeshita fight was a huge letdown, especially after Ricochet claimed he was, quote, ready to carry a company. The guy needs a huge character change if he's going to maintain his status in the upper mid card. I wasn't a huge fan of that match. I think that, man, I don't know. I will put it this way. Let me try to be glass half full here. I think Ricochet needs to get used to the AEW style of doing things because he was used to doing the WWE way of doing things for such a long time. Look, I'm not a pro wrestler, guys. All right. I'm not one. I understand how that shit works to a degree, no more so than anybody else out there who's been paying attention to pro wrestling for 25 years. But Takeshita, in my opinion, is one of the best wrestlers that AEW has in terms of in-ring storytelling, all that kind of stuff. Within 2 minutes of this match, they were already doing rest holds. That's the most WWE shit I've seen. I was not into this match, and I was looking forward to it because I was like, oh man, if Ricochet just needs a dude who's just killer in the ring to bring out what he's got, and maybe it'll just take more time. And I don't know. When you look at him and a Will Ospreay having started out kind of in the same place and making a name for themselves with matches against each other. One guy went to WWE, one guy went to New Japan, and that dude who went to New Japan came out of New Japan a fully formed, compelling character, putting on the best matches every year for the past couple of years. That Fletcher Ospreay match might be my late contender for match of the year. I fucking loved that match, and them making Fletcher into a guy in AEW, where AEW, in my estimation, has always had a problem creating stars. They took Kyle Fletcher and they made him into a guy that I now see as a compelling character and an amazing wrestler. That Ospreay Fletcher match was fucking awesome. This Ricochet Takeshita match, Takeshita looked bored half of it. He looked like he was just sort of going through the motions. And that's not a normal Takeshita thing. I don't know, man. Maybe Ricochet just needs more time in the company, but I wasn't into this match, man. I saw this thing and I was like, oh boy, this is not, I don't think this lived up to the reputation of both wrestlers. There were some good sequences in the match. But by and large, I feel like it took too long to get started. And by the time it got started, it really didn't do enough to justify being like, oh my God, this is great. And that's not even saying anything about Ricochet's character. I've said for ages, ever since WWE, that this dude needed to be an arrogant heel. Look at me, look what I can do in the ring. And he does need to change. He does need to get that figured out. But in AEW, you can also be wrestle guy and not necessarily have to worry about that. Ricochet is not even in the top 10 in terms of what I've seen in the ring in AEW. Maybe that'll change. Maybe it'll take reps. And this is constructive criticism. I don't know the guy and I'm sure he's nice or whatever. But in terms of what I've seen so far as strictly a fan of pro wrestling, the dude, he's got a little ways to go before he cracks that top 10 of dudes that I want to see in the ring in AEW. The Lils 15 says the Mercedes match was her best match in AEW other than her Forbidden Door match. Might have finally found her groove in the company. I agree. I thought that in-ring, and maybe it's a matter of Mercedes needing other opponents who have a certain style, bring something to the match, because Statlander is one of the best in-ring wrestlers they got in the women's division, and this match was awesome. My only concern about it was how deflated the crowd was at that finish, and I wonder if it's a matter of they were really behind Statlander. Statlander is like one of the most loved wrestlers in AEW, And I think that they built this up to the degree that maybe, if you ignore the go-home math, people were thinking, hey, this could be it. Mercedes said, Camille, stay backstage. We don't need you out here. And so it's just her versus Statlander. And I think maybe, if I'm reading the crowd right, a lot of people were thinking, hey, this is going to be it, because that finishing sequence that they had, I thought was really, really fire. And then when the actual finish happened, the crowd was like, ah. So this might be a situation where they should have pulled the trigger on a title change and let Mercedes chase it. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. I don't know how long Mercedes is going to have that title. Obviously, Tony Khan thinks she's a big deal, and I know she was a big investment for the company. But sometimes you got to make these decisions. Maybe the best thing isn't for her to keep the title. Maybe the best thing is for her to chase the title. Gaz Jones says, I really hope Garcia winning the title doesn't mean it gets redesigned. I agree. I get the feeling that because he's a good guy, he's probably going to go back to the default TNT title. But like, if you look at what he was wearing last night, he looked like the current TNT title. It was like black with like dark red accents to it. I hope he keeps it. I think it fucking looks outstanding. I mean, that's one thing he should say as a good guy. Like, look, Jack Perry's a piece of shit, but I'll be honest with you, his belt modding abilities are off the charts. I'm going to keep this title the way it is because it looks amazing. Asian Burr says Kyle can't complain about Adam because he was even later than the Undisputed Kingdom was in saving Roddy. Yeah, I agree with that. And I also want to say this. Within the next month, I want to see Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, Taven, and Bennett all be in their own faction together, doing comedic skits like we saw with the Undisputed Era stuff back in the day. And to a degree, we saw with like the Cole, Roddy, Bennett, Taven stuff recently, last year. Want to see that? Get them the fuck away from MJF. Because honestly, MJF needs something. The trash talking is just stale. The character shit is just stale. The complaints about him having not changed his character in 5 years are valid. And the whole movie shtick, it just doesn't go. Who gives a fuck? So I don't know, man. I want to see the Undisputed Kingdom start doing Undisputed Era shit. Sometimes it's okay just to let dudes do what they do best. But yeah, they got to run away from MJF. I don't know what MJF needs. I don't know, a program with Okada. How about that? That might be, but you know where that's going to go. Static G Medina says first half was good, second half was doom. Now you got to say first half was boom, second half was doom. I agree the Hurt Syndicate needs to establish themselves, but not at the behest of Swerve. Swerve and Jay White should be competing for the title. I think there's a longer story at place with Swerve and Bobby Lashley. Swerve, like Hangman, is one of them dudes who is so fucking creative. He takes losses and he turns them into gold. So I have no problem with what they did with Swerve last night. It showed Bobby Lashley's a dominant force, and yet Swerve Strickland lives to fight another day. So I feel like that feud is going to continue. And then at some point, you got to think Swerve's going to meet up with the Mox stuff. That's what I'd love to see happen. I think there was a different way they could have approached all this stuff, but I'm not going to fantasy book here. But yeah, I think Swerve losing to the Hurt Syndicate, I think that's totally fine because Swerve knows how to take a loss and turn into chicken salad. Strawhead says, Tony, sign the Costco Guys right now. I think the Costco Guys make too much money for AEW, to be honest with you. Anyways, that's going to do it for Hot Takes. Quick update here, guys. Between the video I did talking about buying the title, between the amazing super chat I got from J-Time, between the CM Punk reveal on SmackDown video I did, and the stream I did, where so many of you showed out, and dropped me with some subs on Twitch, we're only about $250 away from hitting that $700 goal to justify me having bought that CM Punk title. I told the wife last night, I'm like, hey, look, the friendos came through. They watched the videos. They watched the Twitch stream. There was that awesome J-Time super chat. I'm like, look, the plan has almost worked. And then I'm sure with the unboxing, hopefully in a week or two, but I still got some more videos on the way. I'm going to still do more stuff on the Twitch. So go to twitch.tv/wrestlejuice and catch some of my live streams over there. But yeah, big heartfelt thank you to the friendos for coming together and helping me Get that CM Punk title. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. One of these guys I've got to go. Which one? Where should I put the CM Punk title? Obviously, I can't. I'm not going to disrupt the gypsy altar over here. Got my little baby girl's ashes right there with her little smiling face on it. Oh, and then yesterday, the vet that she was at a lot over the past 2 years, they sent a little card where everybody at the vet's office signed it. There's like 15 people on there with their well wishes saying we miss Gypsy and she was so nice. Oh boy, that's hard. Anyways, yeah, where should I put the Punk title? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know whatever other hot takes you had for AEW Full Gear. Let me know in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, notify bell. Till next time, we'll see you guys around.